Pagan Perspective. My name's Cody, and I'm normally your Thursday substitute host, but I am filling in for Yucca as she takes some time off to be with her new bundle of joy. This week, I am coming to you freshly showered and wet because I woke up early to film this and to pack to leave for a festival called Family Gathering that is just a gathering of all of the folks in and friends of my tradition, Blue Star. So I'm really excited, but I'm also going to try to be succinct and chat about this wonderful question that I think is super helpful. The question, which you can read below in its entirety from chaoskittenxo, is essentially asking how one manages being in a group with somebody who kind of doesn't do the homework. And I really liked how Kara talked about the fact that there is homework and kind of what that means, and that really jived with me. So I think I'm going to expound on that a little bit and talk about some things that came to my mind as I read the question and thought about my own experiences. The first thing is, I haven't necessarily had a lot of personal experience with this. I've been involved in a couple of groups, some in person, some kind of a little more online based, at least in communication. And I think by that point, by the time that I got that involved with a particular group, the people around me were generally also sort of intrinsically motivated for some reason because depending on the type of group you're in, like if it's more of a learning group or if it's more of a social group, or just kind of coming together and celebrating, that really does matter, and Kara talked about that quite a bit. But I've been mostly involved in more learning-based groups, so a group that's part of a particular tradition or faith. I got a sense that Chaos Kitten's question kind of revolved around a group that wasn't necessarily a teaching group, so maybe the group comes together to celebrate or to socialize and sort of talk about what's going on in their path and their life and all that sort of stuff. I might be wrong, but that's kind of the approach I'm taking in thinking of this question. In the case where there's somebody there that might kind of be dragging down the whole group because they are asking a lot of questions and reveal that they're kind of not necessarily doing much background work and kind of coming in fresh and expecting everybody around them to sort of be their teacher and share the information that they know. And if that's something that the group is kind of okay with, then, maybe that's fine. But it sounds like it's kind of a burden on the group and what's going on. So in that case, I immediately thought of a few things. The first being learning styles. And in the pagan community, I think it's always kind of relevant to think of learning styles and how one learns. Because to somebody who is a little bit newer to paganism, there are decades and decades, and depending on what you consider kind of primary sources, centuries of knowledge that can seem really kind of overwhelming to new folks, and it can be difficult to understand where to start or what to think, and kind of where to get things figured out. So I can somewhat kind of put myself in somebody like what Chaos Kitten described, like someone like their shoes, and think about how I might feel if I were a little overwhelmed. So the reason I think learning styles can be something helpful to consider is maybe this person would benefit from more of a strict teacher-student relationship where information is a little bit more structured. And as long as you're kind of jiving with everything, then you're probably going to get a lot out of that relationship, whatever it might look like. But I think it's important to note that not all people really jive with that sort of way of learning. A lot of people, especially in the pagan community, do an awesome job of learning on their own and being more of a solitary learner, which is really easy to do relatively because there are a lot of great sources out there and a lot of great pagans kind of sharing their own practice and experience. And if your learning style is really tuned into that, you can learn a lot from somebody simply talking about the way that they practice and the way that they think, and you can kind of draw your own conclusions and make your own reality out of that. So I can't help but think that maybe this person just can't get that. I mean, maybe they've never picked up a book and don't want to pick up a book, and Kara talked a little bit about that for sure. But maybe they have picked up a couple of books and are just really confused, and they probably hear all sorts of things about this person's not a good source and this person's a great source and all sorts of conflicting things. So I can imagine it can be confusing. So maybe they're coming into the group asking for a lot of clarification that makes it seem really cumbersome for the group. We're in the queer-ins position where you're not their teacher, you're really just in the same group as them, and you really feel like they're coming in and clearly just not doing the groundwork that is helpful to kind of be on the same page and have kind of more in-depth conversations. Then maybe having just an individual chat with them at some point outside of the group could be really helpful to understand a little bit more about what they do to learn more, and what kinds of things might be helpful for them to learn more, and maybe getting a sense of if having a more strict teacher-student relationship in the pagan community might be helpful, and then maybe pointing them in that direction if that's something they're interested in, if you have those connections. A consideration that really came to mind is the way that pagans meet in person around the United States, around the world, can be another factor, because when you think of geographical realities, there aren't a lot of pagan groups compared to other types of groups. So if somebody finds a group, be it social, celebratory, more of a learning group, they might be inclined to make it work because that might be their only option to celebrate with other pagans in their community or meet other pagans in their community, other like minded folks. So even though it might not be the group that's right for them, it's the only group they have. So understanding that a little bit and maybe helping to point them in the direction of something that might help them more if you're networked like that. We're just helping them understand something that might work for them better, like finding a more strict student-teacher relationship and learning in a more structured way from another person that is there to help keep them accountable and help them understand. Another great thing about that in-person student or even a little more virtual teacher-student relationship is that teachers, especially pagan teachers, are often really great with helping students understand how they learn and help them empower themselves to learn. So that might be a great option. I know I rambled a bit. I just kind of wanted to get some thoughts out because I think it's a really awesome question, and the other hosts this week have done a phenomenal job covering a lot of different bases. So I wanted to touch on a couple that really came to my mind before I head out. I hope something in here helped shed some new light on the question, and I'm going to go finish packing, and I will see you all next week. Have a good one.